up, RotoGrinders? Dean here, Dean 7804. If you want to get all technical, right now it's the start of 2 hours of NBA DFS conversation. It does not stop. Taking y'all straight up the lock. You got Keith Eyster, Eyes coming up later, as well as the return of Tim, TastefulTides. Hopefully he's feeling better. And you got Roth, Kevin Roth coming back as well. Roth must be feeling himself because he took down the cash game king this weekend in NFL. So shout out to him for taking down Overzet. I don't know if did you partake in that scroll? You haven't played a cash game since like 1972, have you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't really do a lot of cash games. If I'm going to do cash games, I'll do them like week one of NFL season, maybe like week one, week two. Basketball, I dabble a little bit more in cash games. Sometimes like UFC, but like almost never for baseball, and then like almost never for regular season football after week two.
And that is Squirrel Patrol. Do not adjust your televisions. Normally Squirrel is on later. Thrilled to have Squirrel on 5 o'clock here. We only talk like in 30-second and minute increments, basically in the crossover, right. Essentially. So yeah, you're stuck with me for an hour and 15, hour and 20 or so. I love your podcast with JM. So I feel like I'm talking to you, although I'm not. But I love listening to you guys talk NFL, your single entry stuff, and then you sort of like talk broad stuff as well too. How did week 18 go, by the way? How did the information slate work out for you?
You know, I felt like I had more right in my content than I had in my wallet at the end of the slate. I felt like I was kind of right on everything. I really didn't like the kind of tenuous like backup running backs that everybody was going to be playing, and I liked the idea of going with other guys instead of like Jordan Mason and Pierre Strong. And that was the right call. It didn't really seem to help me. I mean, I guess a lot more people had that thought than ownership projections were showing, but it is what it is. I've had plenty of weeks that have gone the opposite way where, my content hasn't been that great. And then, it's kind of luck about something. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it is funny how that works sometimes where it's like, yeah, I thought I nailed this and I guess I didn't, Yeah. And also like it was a very chalktastic slate as well. Like Aaron Jones was, I think, particularly chalky. He smashed the mid-tier guys. Connor smashed pretty good too for Arizona. CD got there for Dallas. Mullins got there for Minnesota. Of course he did. Jefferson got there. So and that feels like kind of like the theme of the NFL season. It was pretty chalky for the most part, but we're here to talk basketball, of course. Kind of a tame slate, right? A 6-gamer, pretty quiet in the association, probably because in part of the national championship game going down tonight. Do you have a thought? Do you care about college football? Do you know about college football?
It's actually the sport I watch the least because I didn't go to college that has like a big team or anything. So I actually told my wife that it's almost like she's getting like a day off from sports because like it's a day that like I would, because it's kind of thing that I would be into, but I'm just not into it at all. Like I tell my wife like, hey, it's like the National Football Championship tonight. But, like I'm not going to be paying attention to like to college football because I just don't really do that. So yeah, I don't really pay a lot of attention. I have a good friend that went to Texas, so I was kind of hoping that Texas would be in it. Because you live on the street. So I'd be like, oh, he'd probably be having like a big thing, would go over, like drink beer, watch Texas play. But unfortunately, they got eliminated in the semifinals.
Let us know in chat who's going to win tonight. I don't know anything about college football either. I watch UCF mostly. That's basically, I watch my alma mater. Didn't win the national championship this year, unfortunately. And, there's always next year. They didn't even get they were even invited. Outrageous. The insult. You think they would get, a legacy invite, but nope, did not happen. Maybe producer Steve can set up a poll for the people. I don't know if you want to put the line in the poll. I believe Washington's getting 4.5 versus Michigan. Let us know in chat. Kindly hit that like button while you're, filling out the poll. Do subscribe, do turn on those notifications, do all those things. What's up, Steve? Mr. Richard, Derek hanging out there. Mr. Richard's always polite, always saying hello back. Squirrel, it's a 6-gamer. We have plenty of time to knock it out, get comfortable. As far as who's in and who's out, like his big picture wise, no Jason Tatum for Boston. Porzingis expected to play with his eye. Midday downgrade for Zach LaVine. He's dealing with a foot and a shoulder, and he already came back and was on a bit of a minutes limit. So do want to monitor that. Bruce Brown is questionable with his knee. There's not a lot of big stuff out there. And then we kind of talked about this pre-show. 2 teams. There are 2 teams in the back half of back-to-back tonight. And those 2 teams are playing against each other, and those 2 teams are playing against each other 2.5 hours after the latest game locks. Now, we're told that Kawhi is going to play. We're told that Durant is probable with his hamstring. He was off as well, too, right? Do we just take them at their word? What is the strategy here? Obviously, if everybody's in, certainly you can get there with Durant. Certainly you can get there with Kawhi or George, one of those guys, or Harden. But the game will become more appealing if one of these studs get ruled out. But, you're sort of committing yourself to a certain build. What is the strategy when it comes to that, and just overall strategy as far as tonight's slate?
Yeah, so it's a bunch of Milwaukee. Like, they're just dominating the ownership projections. Like, you can't run any kind of optimal lineups. You're just gonna get a ton of Milwaukee. It's interesting. They're kind of like going a little bit easy on me for my first Grinders Live of the NBA season. Like, yeah, there is pretty limited injury news. At least it's like out there stated. And like the injury news tends to be in the least appealing games. So like even if, I was looking earlier today thinking like if Durant or Eric Gordon is out, like I'm still not sure if I'm that interested in Phoenix. Or interested in that whole game, like the Phoenix like Clippers game. I think the big question on the slate is like, how do you want to handle all of this Milwaukee, like all these Milwaukee cheap guys?
Yeah, I guess I kind of buried the lead with Lillard being out. Lillard being out for personal reasons for Milwaukee, and also their backup point guard is unavailable too, which typically wouldn't matter so much. But with Lillard out, Campaign being out matters to some degree as well. Yeah, I ran the optimizer. Let me run it again because I ran it about a half hour ago. I know it updated the Bull news. That's not a big deal, but it's something. It was enough to adjust, kick him out of the lineup there for Phoenix. He's scratched. I shouldn't say scratched. It's not available for tonight. But it was all green, like you said. If it wasn't Milwaukee, it was Boston. It was this all green stuff basically showing up. And very first optimizer lineup is, let's see, it's all green except for two exceptions: Terry Rozier and Chris Dunn. There's Chet Holmgren cracking some. Yeah, most popular players, I sort of capped it at 70%. This is on DK. And, this is kind of the nature of the season, nature of the slate. But most popular players, we do a little more of a salary cap. Andre Jackson is currently the most popular player. Like him and Peyton Pritchard are both hitting my threshold of like, I didn't want to get any more than 70%. Just want to see what's showing up. Chris Middleton. Then there's Chris Dunn, one guy, non-green. SGA. And I think SGA versus Giannis is a fun conversation we'll have for sure. I don't think you can get them both, just the way salary and the cap works these days. Connaughton, Giannis, White. And then there's Holmgren, and there's Beasley, another green, and there's Porzingis, and there's Brown, that's Jaylen Brown, another green. It's Celtics and Bucks. That is the slate. Anything else that's kind of worth pointing out? Anything that we should talk about before we fully dive in? They also were nice enough, by the way, to give you your Wizards, Squirrel. You get to talk about your Wizards. I'm sure that's super, super exciting. Very promising. The Washington Wizards franchise.
That's what I was going to bring up. Is just the Wizards are on the slate, and that should be something that draws our attention anytime they're on there. I actually have a little bit of a Wizards take too. I'll go. When we get there, I'll talk about it. I think they give up the most points in the NBA, the most rebounds in the NBA. I think like second most points in the paint in the NBA. So bunch of like fun Wizards stats about them being terrible. And so we'll get there. But that's something you should consider. Like Oklahoma City is the lucky contestant tonight that drew the Wizards draw. So we'll see. You should be considering Thunder players for your lineups, basically up and down the board as pivots.
The Wizards are terrible at a ton of things, but they might be most terrible at rebounding.
Yeah.
Their rebounding percent is 44.1%, which is 3 points higher than the second worst team as far as rebounding, 47%. You know what team that is? The Thunder. It's the two worst rebounding. Somebody's going to rebound the ball.
Ball's going to Wizards are going to miss before somebody grabs it.
But yeah, your Wizards. I'm curious to hear your take. I was on the Food for Thought podcast earlier today with Justin Carlucci and Will, and we were talking about a lot of football stuff, but also came up like fandom. And like the Luch is a Titans fan and Will's like a Carolina Panthers fan. Also Charlotte Hornets. Like I just feel terrible. Like shout out to people that are still like this. If you still care about the Hornets, like it's got to be rough. It's just tough. I mean, just Charlotte's getting the double whammy for Will, but I kind of sort of lost most of my fandom. I still have some, but we'll delve into that when we talk about the Wizards. There are 3 games. Half the slate is at 7:00. Half the slate locks at 7:00. Going to keep an eye on the news as well to see if we get some more stuff coming in. But as things stand right now, the cap is pretty tight. Not as tight as it is some days. We're not getting like 12 and 13 point projection players hitting optimals. Can I ask your take on that, Squirrel? I don't know how much of crunch time you watch, leading into your show when you jump on later, but I feel like I'm complaining about this too much and I'm like a broken record about it, but I guess I'm just thankful like 12-point players are not hitting optimals. It's not that bad tonight. If we can get Pat Connaughton and Andre Jackson, get excited.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting how this changes, because like sometimes you'll have like the Christmas slate and it seems like stuff's a lot softer. Like for the big slates that they want to kind of draw in a bunch of casual players, suddenly the salaries like drop. And I was writing some articles for the first week of the season, and I couldn't believe how soft the pricing was. And then it like turns around. Right now we got like Andre Jackson and Marshawn Beauchamp that we're trying to jam into our DraftKings lineups. But I don't really know what the big picture effect is. I haven't figured that out, which is probably
I haven't either.
Yeah, what you want to hear from me. And like, I've got like we should be employing this strategy because the salary cap is so tight. I haven't really figured it out. I guess one thing that really thinking about it is that like those projections tend to be so fragile. Like those 12 and 13-point guys tend to be so fragile. And there's so many other guys that can put up 12 to 13 points, right? Like what we're really talking about are these guys that get like, sometimes they get 6 points, sometimes they get, 14. And there's a bunch of guys out there like that, but we tend to just project the guys that are going to get the most minutes as those guys. Like the Andre Jackson is, the example tonight, or most likely the example tonight. It's like maybe we should be looking at other really minimum price guys that could have an outstanding game and kind of like leap vault all of that chalky $3,000 ownership.
Unless, of course, you're like Sam Merrill. And I guess Sam Merrill's he's been on both ends of that, right? There was the Sam Merrill night where he was super chalky and he got hurt. He hurt his wrist, I think, and he could have put up like 1 point. And then there was a Sam Merrill night where I think he took on your Wizards and just absolutely annihilated them in the fourth quarter. And he put up like 30 or 40, as did Tristan Thompson, I think. Who was also projecting to hit lineups. It's just like, well, I can't in good conscience. I just can't click on Tristan Thompson's, and I'm a hand builder. Like it's probably easy just like let him slip through the optimizer. If you're making 150, I guess, sure, hold your nose. But yeah, I guess like to your point, there is high variance when it comes to the 12-point projection nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it pays to like look down the rotation, see some guys, especially like young players that might be getting a few more minutes. I hit my first like 6-figure NBA win just a couple weeks ago, and it was with Jaden Wilson, and it was just a player that maybe look for the highly drafted guys that haven't broken the rotation yet, but just need an injury, and like the team is maybe incentivized to like get him some more playing time and see what they've gotten him.
You just need Brooklyn to say we're going to bench all our guys after the first quarter. That was beautiful. Yeah. That was what a weird night. Did you see Brooklyn got fined $100,000 for that?
I did. How much was it?
I think it was $100K, which is like whatever. I mean, I made that much money in unders. Yeah. I actually didn't make that. I was not fast enough to get the player prop stuff, and unfortunately, I only have one book, and my book was too quick. But I know a lot of people made money on the under stuff. But I think the NBA just wants to put a kibosh to that. Like, they don't want that. That's a terrible, especially at home. Like you're doing that to your home fans. It's a bad look. It's those guys are clearly healthy. Like Bridges and all the stars are clearly healthy. And it's like, and what is the point of playing one quarter? Like what's happening here?
I think the biggest structural problem in the NBA is that the regular season is basically meaningless. Like the regular season NBA has like as much meaning as like NFL preseason. I think all of the things they're trying to do, like the play-in tournament, the in-season tournament, like the qualifying for awards and stuff, for the all-NBA teams, like you have to play at least 65 games, at least 20 minutes for the game to count, stuff like that. Like that's all geared towards like getting the NBA regular season to mean something in a league where like 2/3 of the teams make the playoffs no matter what. Yeah,
and also in a league where like in playoff matchups, the best teams tend to move on in like a series of 7. It's not like hockey where there's a certain element of randomness. You get a hot goalie. Not like football, the ball could bounce a certain way, and all of a sudden you have a storybook team. I know we've seen it out of nowhere sometimes with the Heat and the 8 seed, but for the most part, generally speaking, in a 7-game series in basketball, the better team is going to move on most of the time. But they're trying. I guess I appreciate they're trying. But then Joel Embiid gets rolled out at 7:00, exactly at 7:00, and it's like maybe you're not trying. Maybe we got to figure this out still.
Yeah, and that's like another thing. I mean, that's like a DFS site thing. Is like, why can't we get these slates to lock why can't the games lock when the game starts? Like the sports book managed to pull that off. The DFS sites. And I've talked to them about this, like both FanDuel and DraftKings, and they always have like some answer that sounds really like, oh yeah, like this is an unsolvable problem at the time. But then the sports book just goes out and does it. Right? like the game, the line locks when the game starts, not at like the 7 o'clock, 20 minutes before the game actually starts.
The same guy who pushes the button to lock the sports book should just push the DFS button. Problem solved. That's it. We're done.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why that's not possible. And I asked them that, and they'll have like, well, because of the stat, the stat provider, blah, 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 locks when they're like, oh, okay, I guess. What
you will see, here's the thing, is there's no official start time of basketball. And sometimes they start at 7:08, and sometimes they start at 7:10, and sometimes they start at 7:05. And I think it's ESPN, like it's either ESPN or TNT, like they start, like it's an 8 o'clock game, and boom, 8 o'clock, they start. So I think that's part of it. But like, I would assume we can figure this out, but I don't know. It's only been 10 years. Hey, you know what? Shohei Ohtani, we still can't play him as both a hitter and a pitcher. Like there's some things you just can't. We can go to the moon, allegedly, but so I hear Twitter. But yeah, it's wild that we don't have technology to figure this stuff out. But all right, we had enough little preamble because it's a 6-gamer, plenty of time still. Chat, by all means, join the conversation, and whatever, if it's pertinent to the conversation, we'll bring it in and give us your questions, give us your thoughts. Again, three games, 7 o'clock on the East Coast. First one, not appealing from a total perspective, right? 215.5. The Bulls at the Hornets. Chicago 6-7 point favorite here at Charlotte. This Charlotte offense is indeed sputtering, just not very good offensively. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. Of course, Ball is out. Mark Williams. Finally, the Hornets ruled him out. Now they said that they don't know when. What would they say? They said indefinitely, or like no clear timetable. He was doubtful 12 games ago. Hasn't played since. PJ Washington's now out for Charlotte. Cody Martin is questionable with that groin. As far as Chicago, midday downgrade for Levine. Vuk has the adductor. He's probable. They kind of limited his minutes a little bit on the comeback. And then there's Patrick Williams, who's questionable. Caruso, who's questionable. We'll get all this theoretically. If not us, Crunch Time will get it before lock because it's 7 o'clock game at the bell. But what can we do now? What's the best we can do as far as attacking Chicago and Charlotte?
Well, like there's not a rule that we have to play a bunch from every game. So this is probably the game I'm the least interested in of the 7 o'clock games. I think like Cody Martin has started the last couple of games, so he's a little bit interesting on FanDuel. I think Miles Bridges is pretty well priced. He's been playing like a bunch of minutes. And he's pretty well priced on FanDuel. I'm getting like a little bit less of them on DraftKings, but they're still like tournament pivots. I think you can play some Nick Richards, like his minutes kind of opened up with the injuries like to the Charlotte big men. Chicago side's really, really difficult to like parse out because Vucevic is back. And then but he's like splitting time with Andre Drummond. So like they're both priced up and they're not really it's just tough to get there. And then you've got like the questionable tags as well. I think with Chicago, I'm still kind of comfortable because like Levine and Vucevic just came back, I think last game. Like they're probably just going to play everybody like 24, 28 minutes. And there's I'm probably just not going to get there. I put them down, I think, as the team I'm going to own the least of. Actually, that was Houston. No, so I'm not going to own a lot of Houston either. But like Chicago is probably second there, second least amount of team that I'm going to have.
They gave Vucevic 25 minutes in his first game back. I believe Levine had right at 30. As far as our projections tonight, like Vuk's getting 29, so he's not full, but the asking price is pretty full. Probably doesn't exceed like 32, 33. You mentioned Drummond. Drummond's a guy you play as a flyer when he's like 4K or something like that, and you hope he can get there in his 15 minutes or so. We're giving him 19. They chopped the 48 center minutes. We do have an if-then setup for this, so they're kind of sort of prepared for it from multiple angles. If Levine is out, DeRozan would be a positive DK value, a positive FanDuel value, as would Kobe White. Kobe White, DK value, not FanDuel value. How much is he on FanDuel? He must be super expensive over there. 7.2 on DK, 7.9 on FanDuel. So a little bit more, relatively speaking. So I suppose if we get Levine out, DeRozan, White, that they would get a bump. I don't know how much more Vuk would get, as you were talking about, as far as him coming back on the path, as far as his injuries. And there's a chance Williams doesn't play too. Patrick Williams, I don't think that really clears the path. Like Dosunmu and Terry will become darts, right? But nothing you feel great about. Is that kind of where you're at? If both those guys are out, if both Levine and Williams are out?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Terry that got the start last game, and he was a pretty good DraftKings value. But I'm guessing his price has gone up so much that he might not be worth the value, even if he he kind of outperformed. So it's Dalen Terry. Well, he's 3,700, so he was 3,100.
He fell asleep in this one. Yeah.
Yeah. If he gets the start again, 3,700. I think you can take the flyer, but again, it's like he only played like 20 something minutes, like 21 minutes last game, even getting the start. So at 3,700, that's like a little bit more tenuous. Even we've got the other Milwaukee guys. I think he's a pivot that you could go to, but we still got to see if he gets the start. And that's
Terry
only,
is such a.
It's only if the other guys are out.
Yeah. We're projecting for what it's worth. We have our projections here at the if-then stuff. If Levine and Williams are both out, we're giving Terry 26 minutes and a 20-point median projection on DK, 20-point median projection on FanDuel. Not a great fantasy point by player on the season, 0.72. Not a big usage guy, 12%. So not terribly exciting. The Charlotte side, and let me see as far as ownership. Like theoretically, there should be some stuff here, right? With everybody being out, but the prices. Terry's 8-3. He basically runs this offense. It's a terrible offense he's running, but it's not his fault necessarily. Bridges is up to 8K. You mentioned Richards, who's sort of fine, right? He's okay, 6% as far as ownership. There's Martin, who's questionable.
He's out.
Oh, did that just happen? Did I miss it?
It just happened, yeah, just a couple minutes ago.
Okay. Does that like McGowan's, JT Thor, Ish Smith?
These guys are so terrible.
Yeah. Can you hear the excitement in my voice?
Right. I can't remember the time that I played Bryce McGowan's that I was really happy about it. Like Cody Martin at least gets the steals and blocks. It makes him like a FanDuel play. I don't know. We'll see if this opens anything up with projections. I'm probably not getting there.
So we have an if-then set up for this as well. And Rozier looks really, really good. 45 points, DK median projection, 43 on FanDuel. Bridges is like a neutral play on DK, about a 39-point projection. And like you mentioned, McGowan's still not really moving the needle, but a 16-point projection-ish around 15. It's just incremental bumps. Nathan Mensah, who I don't know if we're projecting a few minutes. Let's see, how many minutes are we projecting for him? Oh, 17. Okay. I'm trying to see if they added Leaky Black, Malik Black into the rotation to get 4 minutes. You're not rostering him. But yeah, McGowan's probably starts, I'm guessing, but it's hard to get excited about him. 0.57 fantasy points per minute in the season. His usage is 12.5%. It's weird. Is it strange, Squirrel, that Charlotte's decimated and we're still just kind of shrugging our shoulders, whatever.
I mean, it's not the best matchup with Chicago. Chicago's still favored. And I mean, I like Miles Bridges as a play. This probably does boost Terry Rozier a little bit. Like Cody Martin being out, we're probably going to end up giving a bump to Terry Rozier. I think I still like those guys a little bit better on FanDuel than DraftKings. I think the DraftKings price. See, I'm getting a lot of Miles Bridges on FanDuel. He's 7,800 on FanDuel. Let's see what he is. Yeah, 8,000 on DraftKings. Yeah, so 8,000 even, and that you get less salary cap on DraftKings, 10,000 less. So when a guy's more expensive on DK, it's pretty tough to get to him. But it's probably Miles Bridges or bust for me on this game. Maybe some Terry Rozier. We'll see how the projections update.
Yeah, Rozier's going to have the opportunity for sure. And the way Chicago plays defensively, it's not the best matchup for him. But he's going to at least do his best to separate and get some stuff in the transition as well, but they tend to close out in the half court. I did mention McGowan's. He is officially starting. Rozier, McGowan's, Miller, Bridges, and Richards. Isaiah Jackson, Nembhard, and Bruce Brown, all available for Indiana. So Indiana, one of my least favorite teams to figure out as far as rotations. And all those three guys being available doesn't make it much easier. Anything else as far as Chicago, Charlotte? You have any rules that you'd put in place as far as this game or these teams specifically?
No, nothing in particular for this game. I'm just not getting to a lot of the game. So when I get to it, it's a lot of like Miles Bridges one-offs, and you can add Terry Rozier to that game. This is one of those games. It feels like even if you stack the game and it goes into overtime, like that still might not pay off.
All right, this game theoretically could be a lot of fun. Boston, Indiana, 247 is a total. It's high and tight, right? Boston 3-point favorite here on the road in Indiana. We know Indiana plays at a furious pace. Again, Indiana fully healthy now. They had 3 guys that were questionable: Brown, Nembhard, Jackson. They're no longer questionable. They're all in. They're all available. Boston missing 2 of their regulars. The more important one, of course, is Jason Tatum. Porzingis should be good to go with his eye. He is available. And Sam Hauser, the other rotation piece, is not available for tonight. But, we love, a team like Boston that's going to have a condensed rotation, a little bit more condensed than it typically is, and a positive matchup against Indiana. So I assume you have some interest in some Celtics tonight. The optimizer does as well. They aren't necessarily cheap, but, they certainly a whole bunch of them can pay off their salary. Do we like the Celtics a fair bit tonight?
I do. My favorite Celtic is probably Peyton Pritchard, which isn't one of the big spend ups, but Jason Tatum being out is the big headline news, but Sam Hauser I think is out as well. That probably opens up some opportunity for Peyton Pritchard. He's only 4,300 on DK, 4,500 on FanDuel. I think I actually have him tagged in lineup HQ as like the only value play I've got tagged. So like him. It's a really good matchup with Indiana. So you can kind of go to any of the Boston guys. It's just a question in terms of the spend ups. It's a question of which one do you go to. I probably like Kristaps Porzingis the most, but then he does have that eye injury. But I think he's a good tournament play. I think Jaylen Brown is somebody you can get to. And then Al Horford, 6,000 on FanDuel. I think you can go there. Getting a lot more of him on FanDuel than on DraftKings. But really, the guy that I'm probably going to own the most from this game, or at least on the Boston side, and really from this game, is Peyton Pritchard.
Does it bother you? And I get it too. I'm going to play some Pritchard. He's hitting optimizers. He's cheap. He's going to get an elevated role. But just the way he plays, he's really reliant on making his threes. And I'm not saying he's not going to make them. Certainly can. But if he doesn't make them, the floor can be pretty rough. Now, do you have any thoughts on that as far as players that are going to be super popular, that their one route essentially is making threes? And again, he'll have the opportunity to make those threes. Is that something you consider? Or as far as how, one player projected for 20 fantasy points does not necessarily have the same reason why another player is projected for 20 points. You understand what I'm saying? As far as specific to him, specific to Pritchard. And is he good chalk is kind of what I'm asking, because what if he doesn't make his threes? It could be a problem. It will be a problem.
I think it'll be okay. I mean, he's cheap, right? So if you have some leeway there to swing and miss, he's a value play. Only 4,300, 4,500. He should be getting the minutes with Sam Hauser out. He should be getting some increased opportunity there. And then Jason Tatum being out probably helps as well. I would think that Pritchard, if this game gets out of hand in either direction, which isn't necessarily a huge concern, it's like a 3-point spread, but Pritchard's a guy that could be seeing minutes even if the game gets a little bit out of hand. So I'm kind of okay with that. Maybe provides a little bit of safety that his 3-point shooting doesn't have.
Yeah, I'm looking at their roster, and I think there's again, unlikely scenario, but if it happens to come up, I think he would be one of the moppers, right? One of the 5 guys on the bench. Pritchard, Michaela, Banton, Queta, Stevens, something like that. Maybe Brissett. But 5 of those 6 would get that run. I did run the old court IQ, and I fired it up. I kicked Tatum and Hauser off. And, Derek White sees a really significant jump. Now, it's only 64 minutes of Derek White. That sample's not huge. But if you take off both Hauser and Tatum, he's got a 30% usage and 1.5 fantasy points per minute on DK. That's elite. Again, that's a smaller sample, 64 minutes. He'll probably be asked to guard Halliburton, so he'll be busy in the defensive end as well. But how do you feel about Derek White? Jaylen Brown certainly looks good as well, too. The rotation should be pretty concise. We're expecting Pritchard to come off the bench, play 24 minutes. Brown 36, White 34, Holiday 34, Porzingis 32, and then Horford 30. Yeah, this is an island game. They didn't play yesterday, not playing tomorrow, but essentially, 6-man rotation and then like 16 minutes for Cornet, 60 minutes for Brissett. Power rank the rest of the Celtics. It sounds like you're on, obviously you're on Pritchard for salary reasons. White versus Brown. Any interest there? Or do you have a take? One you prefer over the other?
Yeah, I kind of prefer Jaylen Brown to Derek White just a little bit. I think we'll have the salary to get there. And I guess it's a $500 difference on FanDuel, so not tremendous difference. I guess $800 difference on DraftKings. I still kind of prefer Jaylen Brown. I just think he's going to have more usage with with Jason Tatum off the court. I like Porzingis as well. I think that eye injury might get a little bit of ownership off of him. But if he's okay to play, then you'd have to think that he's playing the regularly scheduled minutes, which would hopefully be in the 30s. And again, he should benefit from Tatum being out. So if I had to power rank them, it's probably Jaylen Brown first, Porzingis, then Derek White, then Drew Holiday, then Al Horford.
Are we saying give me at least one or two Celtics in every lineup? Is that just going to happen organically? Any sort of rule you have to plug in there, or it's just going to happen just because that's how it works as far as this slate? You're going to get Celtics.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen no matter what. I think if you're going to try to do a rule like that, I think you'd have to be more inclined to try to force a pacer in. If you've got 3-4 Celtics, make sure you get at least one pacer in. So yeah, because they're a little bit harder to get to. Like you said, when you run optimal lineups, some of the optimal lineups I'm getting, especially on DK, tend to be all Milwaukee and Boston guys.
Yeah.
So those aren't necessarily lineups that I want to play, but it kind of shows you where the ownership is going to be.
How many Celtics is too many Celtics?
I would probably not do 4. I definitely wouldn't do 4. I don't know if I would do 3 Celtics without a Pacers run back. Then it's kind of draws the issue out there. A lot of these guys look pretty good, but it's really hard to choose between.
You can have 3 Celtics without one pacer you absolutely need, right? I think.
Yeah, I think you can go there. If you really want to do 3 Celtics and not have a pacer, I think you can do it. I probably won't, just because I like the idea of trying to get in a pacer into that lineup. It'll drive the projection of the lineup down a little bit. But then you get to a situation where maybe it does become a little bit of a track meet. And then one of the Pacers guys elevates into the winning lineup.
You mentioned the track meet. Of course, the Pacers play at the fastest pace in all of basketball, just ahead of your Wizards. The other thing they do as far as the Pacers, they are really, really vulnerable inside. A lot of that is through transition. They give up the most points in the paint by 3.5 points, 3 and change as far as points over the next team. You know what the next team is? Washington. Have you seen a theme? Have you seen a theme of this slate? You want to pick on Indiana. You want to pick on Washington. By the way, updates as far as the Bulls. The Bulls. Levine's going to play. And according to Coach Donovan, both Vukovic and Levine will see increased minutes. So, okay. What is increased minutes? Levine played 30 last game. What do we project him for now? 32? He was just questionable. He was a midday downgrade with 2 body parts, with a foot and a shoulder. He's also on the trade block. But, all right. So does that change things for you? Your first reaction, Vuk played, I think, 26. Maybe he gets to 30, 31. You weren't really interested in that Chicago-Charlotte game, but does that do anything for you? Do we trust Coach Donovan?
It probably doesn't change anything for me. Levine's still not at a price that even with 32, 34 minutes that I necessarily want to get there. I mean, he was priced at 7,800, 7,900 in November. I don't know. I'm still not getting there.
Let's see. Porzingis won't have a minutes limits. Okay. Yeah, it was an eye. It wasn't so I assume if he can see, he's going to be out there and good to go. And they don't really push him too hard anyway. He usually plays 31, 32 or something like that. Speaking of run backs, as far as Indiana, obviously, if you have all the salary in the world, salary is not the thing. You want Halliburton. Halliburton is awesome. He's an MVP candidate, but he's super expensive. And then we can sort of talk about in a bigger picture, in a broader sense, Halliburton versus SGA. Halliburton, well, I guess specifically SGA because it's the same position. I was going to bring in somebody like Giannis as well. But let's first get your thoughts as far as the Pacers in general. Halliburton getting 17% ownership. This will get a refresh, obviously. The closer we get to lock, the more refined, the more accurate it becomes. But your first assessment of the Pacers tonight is what?
I'm probably not playing a bunch of Pacers unless I've got Boston guys in that lineup. The pricing is just an issue. I could see, I want to play, if I'm playing 150 lineups, I want to play some Tyrese Halliburton, right? And that probably becomes like a Tyrese Halliburton, Peyton Pritchard lineup, because then all my savings or all my salary is getting allocated to Tyrese Halliburton there. But I mean, you can put in, just force in like Jaylen Brown and Tyrese Halliburton, and you still get a lineup. It's just not a lineup that's going to have Giannis. It's not a lineup that's going to have SGA. And I think it's worth doing some lineups like that if if you've got 150 lineups, or if you're going to be sitting down to watch that game in particular. Maybe you want to put in a Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Halliburton lineup, and that kind of thing can hit. I think like for the dollar, my favorite Pacer is probably Jalen Smith on both sites. But yeah, they can be kind of tenuous, but he can be kind of fragile. His prices come up a little bit, but he can also get there. I mean, he's a high point per minute guy, so you can do worse than getting Jalen Smith into your lineup. That's the Pacer that I like the most for the dollar.
That feels like rules, right? Pacer stuff, if you want to put rules in, because you never really know who amongst like Jalen Smith, Obi Toppin, Isaiah Jackson, but it seems like one of those guys tends to rise. They're all like good fantasy point per minute players. On the season, Jalen Smith 1.17, Jackson 1.22, Toppin not great, 0.89. I think part of that is he played a good chunk of his season with the starters, but they're good fantasy point minute players. It's just the flow of minutes on Indiana, it's just not reliable, and it's less reliable when they're all healthy, So I don't know how to pinpoint like this is the guy for Indiana as far as point per dollar. Of course, Halliburton, I understand he's great, but he's just super expensive. By the way, just for fun, I did make a lineup. Oh, I did that on FanDuel. I'll do it on DK as well. On FanDuel, for what it's worth, Halliburton and Brown, I locked him. I'm like, let's see what that lineup looks like. You're getting yourself some Peyton Pritchard, of course. Malik Beasley. Say hello to Nikola Jovic. It's some thin stuff. Bobby Portis, I think is fine. But, of course, you're not getting an SGA. You're not getting Giannis. You are getting a Middleton. So there's some. You got three real players, and Nurkic is Yusuf Nurkic is like a real player too. So it's not the worst lineup. I thought it'd be worse, to be honest. Clicking both Halliburton and Brown. Maybe it'll be worse on DK. I'll run that experiment also. But your favorite fringe player? You said Smith on the Pacers. Is that what you said, Jalen Smith?
Yeah, Jalen Smith. But then it becomes a foul situation. Is it him? Is it Jackson? Is it Miles Turner? And it is where you can set some rules there, but I never seem to get it right either. Like as soon as I think I figured out the rotation, like, oh, this is the rule you can set, and it's that way with the wings too. They just switch it up.
It feels like a fun experiment. If you kind of go back, like whatever the non-starter is for the Pacers, if you just like got over the field in the non-starter and whatever the starter happened to be as far as their bigs, and you can even throw Turner out if you want to. But if you just get over the field on whoever the bench guys are, the 2 or 3 bench guys, and just not playing the starter, you're not going to be right more times than wrong. But the times you're right, really, really are going to pay off for you because that's just the nature of the way the Pacers rotations go. Okay, so I ran that too on DK. Halliburton, Brown. You get Terry Rozier too. Get a couple Jasmine, and Andre Jackson and Pat Connaughton. But yeah, it's not great. Any other thoughts as far as the Pacers and the Celtics?
Not really. I mean, I think the Celtics are in play no matter what your lineup is. I think a Tyrese Halliburton game stack is actually okay. I think you can fit in Halliburton and still get one of the high-priced Celtics. You're probably getting Peyton Pritchard, and you're probably getting a bunch of super cheap Milwaukee guys. But that's plausible. And Halliburton's probably not going to see the ownership that he should, just because he's expensive, but he's not really that expensive. It's not like he's Giannis expensive. So if this game goes off, that's at least a story that can play out in a lineup, right?
Well, I mean, the story of like just the way salaries are this year, point per dollar, right? Point per dollar, you could use that as a measurement. Obviously, it's not the end all be all. Typically, the way point per dollar works, the cheapest guy is the best chance of being the best point per dollar play. There's only one point per dollar play. It's at 6K or 6X. That's Andre Jackson. Now that's 18 points at 3K. Then there's Middleton, who's kind of expensive, SGA, who's kind of expensive, Giannis, who's expensive, Derek White, Rozier, and Halliburton. Halliburton's like the 7th or 8th best point per dollar play. So like he's a really, really strong play. And of course, that's a median projection of 55. If he puts up 70, are we surprised? We're not surprised. If he puts up 55, it's kind of like unnecessary. It probably doesn't kill you, but it's definitely not going to make you. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the next game, the last of the 7:30 games. That would be the Thunder. The Thunder versus your Wizards, 246.5 is the total. OKC 10-point favorite here. I believe your Wizards are fully healthy too. Yeah, DeLon Wright and Shamet are both available, and OKC is fully healthy. So both teams are fully healthy. You said earlier, you had a take on the Wizards. I'm curious to hear your take.
Yeah, so they've been playing some of the guys like a little bit fewer minutes, like Kyle Kuzma, a little bit like fewer minutes than they have normally been seeing, and two of their small forwards, their first round draft pick, Koulibaly, and then Deni Avdija, was a lottery pick a few years ago. They've been playing a little bit more minutes, seem to be getting a little bit more usage just recently. I'm kind of questioning whether, like, if Kyle Kuzma's involved in trade talks, right, as we get to the trade deadline, are they trying to keep some of the miles off the odometer there, right? And so maybe I'm upping my projection on like Koulibaly and Deni Avdija a little bit there, thinking that maybe those guys are going to play a little bit more of a prominent role in the team just as the season like progresses. I think those are two guys that they really see as actually being part of the future, whereas like almost everybody else on the team probably up for grabs. If they can get a first round pick for anybody, they're doing it, especially Jordan Poole.
I mean, they're not even asking for a first round pick. They might like a Panera gift card or something they might take. But
I actually think Poole may be somebody that gets a little bit more playing time, just hoping he puts something out there better than he had put out previously. At the point guard position, like you got to think like Tyus Jones is maybe up for grabs. The issue there is they probably want to trade like his backups as well. Like they would definitely want to trade like Landry Shamet, DeLon Wright, like any of those guys.
Yeah.
If they get an offer, they're probably traded. So maybe they're trying to like limit everybody's minutes a little bit until the February trade deadline. They see who's still there on the team. And the guys that are excluded there are like Avdija and Koulibaly. So I'm actually kind of upping my projection on both of those guys a little bit, thinking they might see a little bit more minutes or a little bit more usage.
Is it too early to look at the NBA tankathon? I just pulled it up. Of course, Detroit's the worst, 3-33. San Antonio 5-30. Your Wizards 6-29. The Hornets are 2 games in front of them. The Blazers are 2 games in front of them. With the first 3 teams all have the same percentage chance. You just want to be in the top 3. Are they aware of this? Is this something they care about, you think? Or it's also like people say they're tanking. Like, no matter whether they're trying to tank or trying to lose or not, it's going to happen organically. They're just going to lose. They're not better than the Thunder. Like, every once in a while they'll sneak up and win a game, but they're also, like you said, not really pushing their best guys. So yeah, you think that's something that they're considering at this point? Is it too early? Or I also heard like apparently the draft class. This is not my area, but I hear people say that it's supposedly like a really bad, really weak class coming in this year. We'll see.
Yeah, it is.
But,
it's supposed to be a bad draft, and there's no consensus number 1 pick, and that's like one of the hallmarks of bad draft classes is like we don't even know who to pick.
Yeah,
if we have the number 1 pick. So I mean, I think teams are just losing. Like I don't think Detroit wants to lose anymore, or like San Antonio. It's shocking. I think like Detroit just lost 28 games in a row or something, 27, 28, and the Wizards are only like 3 games better than them. And there's another team in between the Wizards and Detroit.
Yeah.
I think these teams are actually just losing organically.
Yeah, like the other thing with Washington is like some of these teams are bad. Like there's a lot of teams that are bad, but they're fun. They're not even fun, are they? You tell me. Are they fun? Like you said, you're watching. Do you watch the games? Do the Wizards get the big screen? Are they in the quad box? Do you still tilt the Wizards? Like you know they're not good. You know they're not going anywhere. But you still, is it good to see? like a big game out of Jordan Poole? Do you do a little fist pump there? Or you just care about your DFS lineups?
I care about my DFS lineups, but that makes them fun to watch. as the statistics we've gone over already, worst rebounding team, worst defensive team. So I actually like watching them for my DFS lineups, but I'm certainly not rooting for them.
All right. Do we like any? It didn't sound like you like any Wizards. Not getting much ownership. 12% for DeLon Wright at 3.7K. Like that is not a fun roster. Jordan Poole, he's all the way down to 5'6". If you want to tell yourself a story. If he puts 25 points in the bucket, that's kind of how he has to get there. The Thunder are really good. They have a really good matchup. They're also kind of pricey with the exception. Well, I guess in the mid-tier, they're kind of pricey, right? SGA looks really good. Holmgren looks good to me as well. SGA getting ownership. He's getting more than Halliburton, similar price, 32%, almost double. Holmgren, 16%. We talked about, the rebounding issues, well, for both teams, but more so for Washington. How do you feel about the Thunder? Where are we at when it comes to SGA, Holmgren, the other pieces?
Yeah, so I like the Thunder. Actually, I do like some of the Wizards pieces. I like, Abdia. I like Koulibaly. I guess Daniel Gafford's another guy that we can mention just because the Thunder do have rebounding issues. So he's a guy that might get a few more boards than he normally does. Then on the opposite side, you've got Chet Holmgren and the same story there. Obviously, I prefer to get to Chet Holmgren than Daniel Gafford. But yeah, I think you can actually stack up some Thunder here. And I'm kind of interested in the idea of having some lineups that have more of this game than the Milwaukee game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because what if the Milwaukee game just becomes just a complete clown show? And you've got this game maybe ends up being the one that's a little bit closer. You would want to have more pieces from this game. So I think it's actually reasonable to have some Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, some Chet Holmgren, and run it back with some Abdia, Koulibaly, or Gafford.
Derek in chat says the Wizards need to employ the Savannah Bananas model. Are you aware of what the Savannah Bananas are?
I know minor league baseball team. I've seen some stuff on Twitter, but I don't know what the Savannah Bananas model is.
I don't know if they're I think they're just an independent team. It just plays against whoever, or maybe it's like a Globetrotter situation where they just play against whatever the Generals are. Like the Bananas have a Generals type team. I don't know, but yeah, it's just it's a baseball with different sort of rules, and they embrace fun. They have somebody out there on stilts, 15 feet in the air pitching, all sorts of. And they have they have 10 modified rules as well. They sell out too across the country. Yeah. The people love the Savannah Bananas. I think Roth was once seeking out going. I'm not sure if he ever went, but I remember him talking about it once upon a time. Steve in chat's telling us we got to hit that like button. Yeah, people are answering the poll question as far as who's winning tonight. Is it going to be Washington? Is it going to be Michigan? But they're not hitting the like button. Clearly, you have the ability to hit one button, hit the other, smash it, caress it, do whatever you want. Hit that like button. Turn on notifications too, so you know when we go live. By the way, the Bulls, we now have another update for Zach LaVine. His foot and his shoulder. The update about 15 minutes ago was that he will see increased minutes. Now the update is he's questionable again. He's a game time decision. So this is great.
Yeah, I guess we'll know by 7:00. So, we'll know by 7:00.
Yeah, well, no, but how does this happen? 10 minutes later, he's like, "Oh, by the way, remember the guy I said he might play? He's going to play more tonight. Now he's questionable. All right, I'm going back in the locker room. Thank you."
I have a theory that NBA injury reporting is actually much more amateur than we even envisioned. That I think a lot of these injury reports are just some intern this is the last sheet of paper I got from the coach. I'm just gonna nail this in again, and that's their official injury reports. And so it goes from questionable. This intern's got a thing that says Zach LaVine's probable or whatever. Just submits it, and then we're all trying to read the tea leaves and think there's a huge amount of meaning there. And it's all meaningless. It's just some intern that is just submitting a piece of paper.
You're saying the same intern that fills out the coaches poll, that the same guy.
Yeah, exactly.
is also giving us injury reports.
There's no actual research or knowledge to be gained from reading these injury reports. The coach is just going to play whoever he wants to play. And they've just got some guy checking the box because they'll get fined, right? If they screw up and don't submit an injury report.
LeBron's still questionable today? Yeah, LeBron's still questionable today. Sure, why not? And I just love the idea of gamesmanship. We can't let them know if LeBron's playing or not, because they've never seen this guy play before. They don't have any tape. They have no idea what would come. If he did play or if he didn't play, let's let him waste their time in the locker room.
Yeah.
It's pretty, and it's like the worst teams in the world that have the gamesmanship too. It's like, you guys are 4-20. Just let them know who's playing. It's okay. You're going to lose either way. All right. My Heat, who, speaking of annoying injury stuff, the Miami Heat are super annoying when it comes to this. They did tell us that Jimmy Butler's out with his toe. Caleb Martin. I guess all the Martins are out tonight, right? The brothers Martin, both unavailable. Kyle Lowry should be good to go with his illness, taking on the Rockets. The Rockets, Tari Eason's got that leg, so he's not playing. Of course, Dylan Brooks is still out with the oblique. Not a very high total, 219.5 down here in South Beach. The Heat are 4-point favorites. If you're power ranking the games as far as appeal, I don't think this one has a ton. I think it's not on the podium, not for me, not in the top three. You tell me otherwise. How do you feel about Houston, Miami?
Yeah, this is probably the game I'm getting the absolute least amount of. Houston's the team that I'm getting like the least of. Bam Adebayo is interesting on FanDuel, 9,100 on FanDuel. What is he on DK? 8,800 on DraftKings. The blocks, counting blocks and steals, counting a little bit more on FanDuel. So like that's an easier price tag, even though it's higher on FanDuel than DraftKings. On DraftKings, you've got a couple of the cheap guys. I think it's Haywood Highsmith and Nikola Jovic, who started the last couple of games. We don't know if like Jovic or Highsmith is going to be starting. I don't know that I really like either of them that much, but you can certainly go to whoever is in the starting lineup as a cheaper guy.
Yeah, we saw Jovic draw the start last time, played the entire first quarter, played some of the second quarter, started the third. In the middle of the third, he just disappeared. He turned into Josh Richardson, who did not leave the game. Jovic never came back. I see in chat they're asking about Kevin Love. Kevin Love's been pretty good this year, fantasy-wise. What is he per minute? I feel like he's got to be at least a fantasy point per minute guy. Yeah, dude, you want to take a guess? Well, I'm kind of leading the witness now, but what would you guess Love is fantasy points per minute on the season? DK.
1.15.
1.28.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah, 1.3 Bam Adebayo. He's right there with Bam Adebayo, fantasy points per minute. Obviously, Bam plays more minutes. That's why he gets more fantasy points. But, Love has been spectacular fantasy-wise. Pretty strong usage as well. So, sure, he's center and center only, which is kind of annoying. But that's also really keeping his ownership down. It's at a 0.5 percentage point. That seems kind of low. If you're running 150, hypothetically, would Love be in your pool?
He actually is. I actually have like one of them out of 150 if I start running optimal
over
lineup.
The field. Well, no, I guess not over. Right there with it, I guess.
Yeah, but actually, I don't mind that play at all. Now that I know the average is like 1.28 DraftKings points per minute this season, I think that's just as good as anything. And if he's really seeing like a 0.5% ownership, I'd probably want to be like at least 3 times the field on Kevin Love.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously, he's projected for 18 minutes. It doesn't mean he can't play more than that. He has played more than that the last 3 games, 20, 27, 22. It is an island game, so maybe that gives him a little bit more of a minutes floor. But yeah, Love's been really good. He's really good for Miami. Jaquez, I like him as a rookie, as a Miami fan. Just the price is kind of, he's at a point now where I think he's kind of sort of somewhat hard to play. 6'2" is a little bit tough, but he's not going to be owned at all. Bam is an interesting pivot away from some of the other, big names on this slate. He's at kind of an awkward price, center and center only 14% here versus Şengün. Otherwise, is anybody getting ownership on Miami? Yeah, Jovic at 4.7. I think he's more popular on FanDuel. You might have said that. I know you mentioned Jovic as well, where I saw him hitting optimals more. What's his price on FanDuel? You have it in front of you? I meant to jumping back and forth.
He is 4,000 flat on FanDuel power forward.
Yeah, so he's like, his current projected ownership on FanDuel is 48%. Is that good chalk or is that bad chalk? Because it feels a little fragile to me. I know there's not a lot of pivots.
That's really fragile, especially because he may not be in the starting lineup. So yeah, let's see if what impact Haywood Highsmith has on him. Like, there's no way I would play 48%. Nikola Jovic.
Yeah, I think that's a bad idea. I know we're pinching pennies and it's hard to make stuff work and you want to spend up for like the players you really actually want. but just find a way to do something a little bit different. And like you're gonna have some, I assume, right? You'll have some on FanDuel, but just not with the field.
I'll have some. If you like, especially if you're starting, I would be surprised if I'm anywhere close to 48%.
Steve in chat says he kind of likes Freddie VanVleet, FEV, with Miami and their zone coverage. And maybe FEV, Freddie can pick apart Miami's zone defense. How do we feel about the Rockets? Freddie, certainly good. Just a little bit expensive, 8.3K on FanDuel. I think he's 8 on DK. Jalen Green, Şengün. I love Şengün. It's just that his price really kind of skyrocketed, justifiably so. It's just hard for me to get there. I wish Aaron Holiday's minutes would go away and Thompson would grab most of them because I think he'd be interesting, but it's hard to just assume that's going to happen. I think eventually Thompson will unseat Holiday. We're projecting Holiday for 19, Thompson for 18 currently, Tate at 22. Not a player I necessarily love to play, but he's expected to draw the start, but he doesn't necessarily close. Your read on the Rockets tonight is what?
My highest owned Rocket, if I'm like running just optimal lineups, is Amen Thompson at 2%. So this is the team that I'm just not getting to. And it's hard to think about what would change that would get me to this team. I mean, there's a 219.5 total. There's no real injury news, and we've got a couple of games, 3 games like north of 240 points. So yeah, I'm probably just not getting to this game a lot. And it's just a total thing, and everybody's like well priced. So
he kind of middle of the pack as far as defensive efficiency, but they play really slow. I think they're the 4th slowest when it comes to pace. The Bulls, the slowest, by the way. We mentioned the Bulls earlier. That's one of the reasons why Chicago, Charlotte had a game total of 116 or so. There are 2 games left, about 15 minutes till we get to crunch time. You got Roth, you got Tim, you got Keith, Eyster. Go ahead, fire off your questions in chat. We might have time to entertain those, right? Just 2 games left. They usually come in at about 15, 20 minutes, and they, of course, will take you all the way up the lock. Get your question, if not in the YouTube. Go to the Discord first. That's where Roth is going to be getting those questions, rotogrinders.com/Discord. Most of the Discord channels are free. Have you been partaking? You're in a sports gambling state, right? I believe you're in a sports
Virginia.
gambling state. Yeah. How's that working out for you? Have you been partaking with the squad rides? The squad rides been pretty hot. Are you aware of the squad rides? I assume you are. Have you probably heard us talk about it? I don't know if
I haven't been doing squad rides. I should. It's New Year's resolution. I should be doing more squad rides, but haven't been partaking so far.
You'd be up in the squad rides overall. There's been some peaks, there's been some valleys, but there is a squad ride pick out there right now. rotogrinders.com/Discord. Go to the squad rides, and we basically all bet the same thing. And one person's nominated. They picked that from the scores and odds stuff, their favorite bet on scores and odds. And I'll tell you that the bet today is in the Oklahoma City Thunder game. How's sports gambling going for you overall? You liking it?
Yeah, I like it. Actually, I mean, I'm probably in a unique situation with this, but I really like the idea if I can sometimes do like a hedge on like DFS lineups. Like if I'm winning a tournament, or if I will win a tournament, if a certain thing happens, I can suddenly like put like a $500 bet on something, or $1,000 on something. Like I had a situation this summer where like if the Phillies scored a run, I was going to lose a tournament. Like, so I'm winning like $50,000 like DraftKings baseball GPP. And yeah, like put like $1,000 on the Phillies to score a run in the bottom of the 9th inning. And it was like maybe 2.5 to 1. And I lost the tournament, but I got a little like consolation prize in addition to like, getting second place.
That's smart.
I think that aspect's interesting.
Can you do that with like MMA as well? I'm trying. Is it clear like in the last fight, like if this guy does X, I'm going to win this? Is that something you can look at? I'm just trying to think of other ways you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, I've done it with MMA as well. Like I put $1,000 on the last fight, the 5-round fight, because I was winning like a DraftKings UFC ticket, right? Like you can get up to like 5 for the live final, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to win this ticket unless the underdog like wins the 5-round fight. So I just put some money on the underdog, put like $1,000 on the underdog, and I think I actually got this seat. It was over the summer, so I'm trying to remember. But it was like, okay, so
you've won and lost so many tickets. I'm sure. Like, who knows at this point?
Yeah, I think I forfeited like the $1,000 cash prize I would have gotten for the there's like those live final seats are much smaller. But I got the seat equity. So
chat's asking about Vukovic, how many minutes. I don't think they've updated it since the updates on last projection we have as far as lineup HQ was 537. I don't know if they're going to change it. We have him at 29 minutes. My guess is they might bump it up to 30, 31, but I'm not on the projection team. Curious to see if they change that. The update, for what it's worth, was that Vuk, who played he played 25 minutes, so that is an increase, right? It was Levine who played 30 minutes, and we're not even sure if Levine's going to play or not tonight, but I'm guessing if Levine plays, maybe he plays 31, 32. It's not an exact science. It's a median projection. We have Levine for 33, so that will be more. Or it might be 0. Stay tuned. Okay. 2 games left to go. Let's talk about it. We've kind of teased the Bucks several times. 242 is the total. They're 8-point favorites, so not massive favorites. If Vegas is right, if it's an 8-point game with 3 minutes to go, we should have all the Bucks starters still out there. Of course, Lillard is out tonight. No campaign, no backup point. Jay Crowder is still out. Utah, speaking of fickle, volatile rotations, Utah is fully healthy, and I'm glad I'm not on the projection team. I don't have to project minutes for Utah because outside of like Markkanen and Clarkson coming off the bench, it's tricky, man. And it's like a bunch of guys playing mid-20s, and it's tough, right? But Kessler, for some reason, they don't want to develop him. He's playing 24 minutes. I don't know why they regressed his minutes this year. You got to give John Collins 26. You got to grab John Collins. You got to Kelly out 18. It just seems weird to me, but whatever. Chris Dunn is hitting some stuff, which to me is kind of uncomfortable. But let's talk about the Bucks first. I guess we should lead with Giannis and Middleton, the 2 studs here. Well, different tiers, but Giannis clearly the stud for Milwaukee. How are you handling the Bucks?
I think you've got to limit like how many Milwaukee guys you're jamming into lineups. Like we said, like if you start running optimal lineups, you get some lineups that are all Bucks and Celtics, and it's primarily Bucks. But like not all of these guys are probably going to hit. Probably like the best guy, the guy that I would want to have the most of is probably Chris Middleton, just because he's like well priced, like 7,000 I think on both sites, and like I think he's going to see like a pretty big bump with Damian Lillard off the court. So Middleton's actually the guy I'm interested in the most. You can obviously like if you want to spend up, you can get Giannis. The problem is if you get to Giannis, you really need him to like have a huge game, like 12,800 on FanDuel, 11,700 on DraftKings. So getting a little bit more of them on DraftKings, actually getting a lot more of them on DraftKings.
Yeah.
But like he kind of has to go berserk to get, to pay off that price. And if he has a 75, 80-point game, then he's going berserk. But like if Giannis has a 75, 80-point game, like, is he taking away some of the shine off of Andre Jackson? But Andre Jackson, though, is a guy I'm getting a lot of on DraftKings because he's only 3,100. He's probably going to see some minutes, and he just opens up so much. I think he'll be pretty highly owned. I might end up over the field. I might end up with like more than 50% Andre Jackson. What do we got his ownership at 28? I think he's going to see more than 28% ownership. But we also have to kind of wait and see what the starting lineup is. So, but Andre Jackson is a guy that's been getting some starts, and he generally gets some decent minutes when he does get to start. Averaging 20 and a half minutes as a starter, along with 3.8 points per game, 1.6 assists, and 3.4 rebounds in those 20 minutes.
Are you excited to roster him after reading that?
Yeah, but still only 3,100. That's a pretty good price. I actually have a Justin Carlucci story. My one time meeting the Luch in person was at DraftKings at the King of the Beach, and I saw him at the dinner. They had like an outdoor dinner. I'm talking to him. We're having a beer, and I'm like looking at my phone. I'm like, oh, I got to run. Like the Bucks just put Andre Jackson into the starting lineup, so I like late swap all my lineups. I put in like a ton of Andre Jackson, and yeah, he probably put up like 3.8 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 1.6 assists that night. It was not worth leaving the dinner to go run up to my hotel room to get Andre Jackson into my lineups. But at only 3,100, the question with Andre Jackson is not what does Andre Jackson do. We probably know what he's going to do. He's probably going to put up 14 points. The question is like, what else are you doing with the salary? So
what does he get you?
Yeah.
Biggest boost, by the way, if Lillard comes off the court, firing up the old court IQ, Middleton 8.2% increase in usage. That is a monster jump. Jackson 3.4%. What is his minute sample? 94 minutes. 0.79 fantasy points per minute. Not a complete disaster there. Usage 13.5%. Giannis gets a small bump, 2.2%, up to 36%, 1.71 DK points per minute, which is phenomenal. You mentioned Giannis. Like, I can't do it. I can't guarantee it. I can't promise you. But if I had the almanac, I do pretend to have the almanac, but I actually had the real almanac. I tell you, Giannis is scoring 60 points tonight. No more, no less. Like, to your point you're making before, you might just X him out, right? I mean, that's, just bet on, different paths of like Halliburton, SGA, like Bam, and a couple other upper mid-tier guys. Like, he needs to put up 70, 75, like you're kind of insinuating. His median projection is, what is his median projection here? 68. Yeah, so 60 is worthless. 60 is terrible. That's a bad number. You X him out, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he's getting 60, then he's not paying off the price. I mean, you never know what would happen like elsewhere on the slate, but yeah, that's probably not getting you there. Especially on FanDuel, 12,800 is a ton. Like, it's 1,000 more than SGA. I think it's an interesting dynamic. I think a lot of people are going to be going with a combination of Andre Jackson and then go to Giannis. So I think maybe there's some thoughts that you don't want to be playing a ton of those guys together. And maybe you go with some Giannis, but then you're trying to just like go with a mid-range build with the rest of the lineup. Or you go the other way, you play Andre Jackson, and then you're playing like, some SGA, you're paying up for like Bam, Chet Holmgren, whoever. You're just spending the money elsewhere. Because I think a lot of like optimizers, especially on DK, are just going to be spinning out a ton of Andre Jackson and Giannis lineups.
Yeah, it's just so wild, NBA DFS. Andre Jackson projected to be one of the highest owned players on the slate. Or just fire the mid-tier guys. Take like Middleton, Lopez, Portis, or something like that. Like, just play those three together and ignore the top and ignore the bottom. And hopefully those three guys. You were talking about rules or the thoughts of rules, and you're kind of saying it in jest. Like, Giannis, if he fully smashes, if he puts up 80, 85, he's going to eat off whatever little crumb that Andre Jackson might have for those kind of guys. Is there different rules depending on, like you said, max players for the Bucks? Like, maybe it's like, I'm just throwing as an example, max $3, but if you're playing Giannis, max $2, like something like that. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting one because that makes some sense. And I guess there's a question too, like, can Giannis and Middleton both get there? And I actually kind of prefer Middleton. Like you said, like the usage increase goes to Middleton when Lillard's off the court. It actually makes some sense. Like, maybe, Middleton's going to be doing more of like the ball handling, maybe not ball handling, but step into the assists or whatever. Yeah, I do think Giannis can probably go north of 60. But it's true. Like, even at like 64, like, do you really like at 12,800? Do you really want Giannis on FanDuel? Like, I'd be much more inclined to try to
on FanDuel. No, yeah. I mean, it's not crushing you, but like, it's not helping you. I don't think it's going to help you.
Yeah, the problem is he can put up 80. And
that is the problem,
or even more. So then maybe there's a thought that if you're playing some Giannis, you want to be playing some Utah guys as well. Like, if Giannis is going to have a monster game, maybe he does need, it's kind of like a football rule, right? Like, he needs at least somebody from Utah pushing him if he's going to put up that like 70, 75 point game that starts to kill you.
So I ran some court IQ stuff, and I had it with just Lillard off, and Middleton and Giannis had the same assist percentage. Like, they're kind of 1-2 at like, I already erased it, maybe 35%, whatever it was. But now I kicked off Payne, who's also not playing tonight. The samples are crazy small, so it's a grain of salt, right? But Middleton, 23 minutes, a 43% assist rate. Giannis, a 36% assist rate in 55 minutes. But Middleton, more assists there. I did bet him on the old Hard Rock app before the show. I bet him on it over as far as his assist here versus Utah. You're talking about running some Utah runbacks here. You're going to have some Milwaukee. You want some correlation. Hopefully they can keep up. Talk to me about Utah, who your favorite players are, and the Jazz. How do we feel about chalky Chris Dunn? 4.3K on DK, getting 27% ownership. Sexton, again, these guys play basically 20, 25. Nobody really gets a ton of run on Utah. The most you're probably going to get is Markkanen, but he's also priced that way. How are you handling the runbacks for the Jazz?
I'd still probably like Colin Sexton, like at least on DraftKings, I like Colin Sexton more than Chris Dunn. I think Sexton's a little bit more pricey on FanDuel, so not as good of a play there. On FanDuel, the guy I like probably John Collins. If I wasn't getting so much Milwaukee, I'd be really against this like chalky Utah stuff because we never know what the rotations are going to be. Like I think if you're playing a lineup that's dominated by Milwaukee guys, which you're going to get a lot of if you start running optimal lineups, even if you like start to hard code a couple of players, right? You're locking some guys in, you're still going to get a bunch of bucks. If that's the case, I don't mind running it back with some of these Utah guys because, especially like Giannis, if Giannis is going berserk, he probably needs a Utah guy pushing him. It's just I don't know how much faith I have in these really cheap guys, but it is what it is. We live in a world of salary cap, so. I think you can play some Chris Dunn. He's not my favorite, and he's going to see some high ownership. But this is a case just because we're getting so much Milwaukee that if that I'm okay playing like some cheap, fragile, high owned chalk, just because it's at least like a run back, to the Milwaukee guys.
I would just throw out like Connaughton's getting half the ownership as Jackson. He certainly can score more points than Jackson. He's basically projected for the same, but the pricing's a little bit different. Jackson, even if he starts, there's no guarantee he closes. Certainly, Connaughton can close. Portis can close. Beauchamp can close. Kid Catastrophe is asking in chat, can you play Middleton and Beauchamp together on FanDuel? I think you can do that, right? I think that's fine.
Yeah,
I think so. It out.
Like Beauchamp's only 3,800 and Middleton's 7,000. I think those are actually pretty good prices on both of them. So it's maybe not going to be like correlated together, but they're both cheap enough that I think you can do it.
Anything else? Final thoughts before we talk about the Phoenix Clipper game? Again, Phoenix and the Clippers play 2.5 hours after the second to last game. Utah, Milwaukee locks both these teams in the back half of a back-to-back. But, far as we know, there is no news out there that needs to be monitored. Durant is expected to play. He's probable. Gordon is probable. Nasir Little already ruled out. Bull already ruled out. Kawhi Leonard not appearing on the injury report. Just understand there's a chance. Not trying to be paranoid, but I'm just saying we've seen these things happen before. 233 is the total. I'm sorry, I asked you the question, Scroll. Do you got anything else as far as this game, or as far as the Milwaukee Jazz game, or shall we knock out the Suns and Clippers as crunch time comes in here shortly?
No, I'd already forgotten this game was on the slate.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping too. And I don't think it's going to be owned, right? Suns, Clippers, there's some stars in the game, right? Booker, Durant, Beal, Harden. Clippers been playing better of late. We saw Zubac drop an awesome game last night. He's had some ceiling games of late. He can get those 17-17 type games with the prices adjusted to some degree. But I think this game's going to be mostly ignored. People are going to be watching the national championship game. Who knows if they're going to be making adjustments or not. But ownership-wise, as of right now, the biggest ownership number on DK, Nurkic at 7%, Grayson Allen at 1%. I think this is going to adjust a little bit. Kawhi's got to be at least 1%, right? I would assume so. But you're also you're playing a bunch of tournaments, and you like to lean in the variance, of course. What do you win when you're right? And even you're not waving Phoenix and the Clippers, whatever.
I think this is my favorite of the games that I don't like at all. So
yeah.
So of the Bulls, Hornets, Houston, Miami, and Phoenix and the Clippers, absent anything that changes in terms of news, actually some of the guys on this game are decently priced. They're just getting kind of shoved off the lineups by the Milwaukee guys. So I actually think James Harden and Nurkic on FanDuel are pretty well priced. I don't actually mind the idea if you're doing 150 lineups, even if you're doing 20 lineups, you're doing one of the 20 entry max. Take a lineup or two and maybe have 2 or 3 guys from this game. Just because we never know what shenanigans are going to pop up, right? This is the Clippers. It is 2.5 hours after the slate locks. People are going to forget it. Yeah, people are going to be watching the national championship, kind of forget about this. In terms of my core pieces, I'm probably just going to leave this to showdown. I'm guessing I haven't looked, but I'm guessing they have a pretty good single game contest for this.
I would assume so. I thought they might leave out the slate altogether. But I guess it's because the slate's pretty thin. They kept it. I assume that's the reason why. If there was 9 games, this will be gone, right?
Right. I'm kind of a fan of them chopping off the late games. Let everybody
Yeah.
get it early. But yeah, you can maybe save some spots for this game. I do probably like James Harden and Nurkic the best though out of this game.
Yeah, you say save spots, but like, and again, I'm not trying to make anybody paranoid, but like saving like one spot at like the shooting guard spot could, you could be setting yourself up for something goofy. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but try to, like, if you have that one spot, be flexible, or have two, and then you give yourself some more flexibility. Just understand there's a small chance it is the back half of a back-to-back. Historically, the Clippers have done some things. Not saying it's going to happen, just sort of throwing it out there. Mr. Richard says he likes Nurkic. That's the only player he likes for Phoenix. Let's see. MD wants to know, Mac, we talked about this over Milwaukee. Have you settled max amount of players as far as Bucks for you tonight in one lineup?
I actually, so for multi-entering, I really like the idea of going like 3 max without a Jazz guy. Maybe 4, do 3 or 4, and then just like rotate through, like kind of crank up that uniques so that you're getting like a different distribution of Bucks guys. I don't see them all hitting like we see in the optimal lineups, like when you run those. It's maybe a little bit of an edge. Like you're going to get some like Pat Connaughton, right? And like he's a guy that could hit, and like suddenly Andre Jackson's not as appealing, even at 3,100 if Pat Connaughton's having a big game.
He can outscore Jackson by like 12 points. Like that's not shocking. That's something he can do. But one more question. I see crunch times here, but I'm curious. I just want to touch on it. Steve says Ty Washington season. Kind of joking, I imagine. I think we're projecting him for like 6 minutes or so. I'm curious if you're running 150, does he touch your pool?
Probably, but I'm not. I didn't like Ty Washington at Kentucky. Didn't like when they lost to like that New Jersey like Division II school in the NCAA tournament. I guess that team ended up making like the Sweet 16 or Elite 8 or something. But yeah, not a huge fan of Ty Washington as a basketball player. I probably don't have interest in him unless he's in the starting lineup, or unless we get something from the coach saying like, yeah, looking forward to seeing like Ty. And it's possible because he's probably
it's Ty season.
Yeah, he's the truest point guard left with like Cameron Payne and Damian Lillard out. I'd need some kind of news before I start getting a lot of Ty Washington.
We got Tasteful Tides. Tim, welcome back. Hope you're feeling better. Keith is here with us as well. And the new cash down king, it's Kevin Roth. What's up, Roth? You had yourself a nice weekend. You took down Overzet. Congratulations to you.
Yeah, and he said, if I lose to the weatherman, I'm going to hang it up for good.
That's it.
And then I whooped that ass. So that did feel pretty good.
Congratulations to you. We did take up, we took you guys, you're hanging out for a couple minutes or so. You're going to have plenty of time because 40 minutes, it's kind of a short slate. But I was going to say, any national championship takes? I still haven't wagered on the game. I know we ran a poll in chat. The chat's saying 57% is on Washington, 42% is on Michigan. The poll is done, but the public is dumb. But the chat's not dumb.
Yeah.
So how am I supposed to decipher this information?
Is that with the spread or not the spread?
With the spread. And also it's +5. Producer Steve fudged it. I think it's 4.5, unless the number is different elsewhere. I saw it at 4.5. Maybe it's moved to 5. I'm not sure. But somebody sell me. Who should I be? I have to wager on it just by law. Otherwise, I get my sports betting card taken away. Don't I have to bet on this? Well, it's 5.5.
5.5 now.
Oh, Jesus. What do I do now? We got to run a new poll, I suppose. It's 5.5. But does anybody have any takes? Who wants to sell me on Washington or Michigan? Anybody have a thought? Not everybody at once.
I have a thought. It's a national championship game, and I have zero desire to watch it whatsoever. Is that wrong? Like, I don't care. I don't care.
You're going to watch some basketball? Is the Golden Bachelor still going on? Is that still a thing?
I'll probably watch some crappy show on Netflix. Like, for whatever reason, I'm not invested in these teams. Am I alone? Am I crazy?
I had a 50% profit boost on FanDuel and a 50% profit boost on DraftKings, and I bet the opposite sides, so I win $1. No matter which team wins. I'm gonna celebrate tonight.
That's the sharp move for sure. All right, myself and Squirrel will step aside and get out of here. We do appreciate you guys watching the first portion. Squirrel, that was fun. First time all year. The two of us got the chat for an hour and 20 minutes as opposed to the 2 minutes in the crossover. That was Squirrel Patrol. I was Dean. You got the FanDuel sponsor Crunch Time. You got Chief Mineralogist Kevin Roth. You have Keith Eyster. You got Tasteful Tides. Tim Roth, take it away.
Good stuff. As always, welcome to it, ladies and gentlemen. This is crunch time. We're going to take you up to lock. We're going to take you through lock. We're going to give you some plays. We're going to take your questions, and we're going to break down the slate as best we can. Joined by two of the sharpest minds in the biz. We got Tim, TastefulTides in the house. What up, Tim?
Yeah, not much. It's my first show in like a week. I think I've been very, very sick. So I'm just coming off a pretty bad illness. So I'm going to do my best here to get through this show.
I'm glad you're back. It's going around, man. Like everybody in my family, everybody's sick. So I'm glad you're on the bounce back.
Thank you.
We got the Iceman, Keith Eyster, in the house as well. What's up, Ice?
Doing pretty well. Fun little slate here. It's only 6 games, but plenty of injury news that's opening up more value than we see sometimes on these like 10 and 11 game slates here recently. So pretty excited about this one.
Okay, and this is kind of like a 5+1 because the late game is so late. Is there news in that late game that could make or break us? And I have to try to build around that because I really don't want to.
As of right now, there is not. Dean is kind of like alluding to the Clippers have been dodgy with their injury report a little bit this year. Phoenix, both teams are on a back-to-back. So something popping up throughout the night would not be all that surprising. But as of right now, there's nothing we are waiting on.
Okay, Tides, you got anything you want to add there?
No, I was glad that Keith brought up. Yeah, they're both on the second nights of back-to-back. I mean, there could be news. It wouldn't surprise me. They're both kind of like veteran teams that rest players, but I can't quantify any of that. Like, what do I do with that info? Probably nothing. So, I mean, we talk about saving a couple spaces here and there, but I'm not going to do that because I don't really like that game in general. So how am I going to save a spot or two? And if it doesn't line up exactly the way I want it to, then I'm screwed. So I'm not going to play that game at all in cash or my single entry. So
okay, and Ice, let's say you're doing 20 entries. Are you saving a percentage, maybe 2 or 3, or you're keeping some flexibility in those spots so you can maybe get some low-owned great plays?
I'm not planning to. I think officially it's Kevin Durant probable and Eric Gordon probable. Gordon might have actually already been ruled available.
That's not very exciting.
No, but like it would not be surprising to see Durant get a downgrade to questionable at like 8:30, which would be disastrous if you don't have, I mean, not disastrous. Both teams are priced up. They have multiple stars, and it's the second night of a back-to-back in a slow-paced game. So I'm with Tides on this one. I'm not saving any spots. It's a little bit concerning in case something does happen. But I think I'm comfortable fading it just because the stuff we have early is so good.
Okay, very good. Well, that is a nice little segue into what we do have right now, and that is a little FanDuel build. We like to start with FanDuel, as this show, by the way, sponsored by FanDuel. So, Tim, you want to walk me through your general thoughts here on like a FanDuel cash build?
Yeah, so cash games really totally begin with the Milwaukee Bucks. We had Dame ruled out last night due to personal reasons, so that leaves a ton of usage and a ton of minutes, just a ton of opportunities for all these Milwaukee Bucks players. So the obvious 100% cash game lock that you must play in cash is Chris Middleton. He's 7K, shooting guard, small forward. He's probably going to play a lot of the point guard duties tonight. They get a really good matchup against Utah. So, yeah, so Milwaukee, I'm probably going to be playing at least $3 in cash tonight. So you're definitely going to be leaning on the Bucks a ton. Malik Beasley is a decent value play on FanDuel at least. And then the question kind of becomes, what do you want to do with Giannis? Because we also have SGA in this amazing spot against Washington, and SGA is $1,000 less. So it's kind of like, do you want to play Giannis as your fourth Milwaukee guy, or do you want to get to SGA? That's kind of the debate in my mind right now. We also lost Jason Tatum on this slate against the Pacers, who are one of the worst defensive teams in all of basketball. So you want to be able to get to some Celtics guys. They're kind of in a funny kind of upper mid-range price point, though, so it's kind of tough to fit those guys. So we've got guys like Peyton Pritchard, who are good value pieces that are he'll probably be coming off the bench. We've got Jaylen Brown and Derek White would be the higher end guys for Boston.
Okay. Well, why don't you just start us with the kind of a FanDuel cash build walkthrough position by position, and we'll see where we land, because there's a lot of dudes I want, and none of them are cheap. Like, I want Middleton, Giannis, I want Derek White, and then all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, I'm not in a very good spot here.
Yeah. So, all right. So, at point guard on FanDuel, if you can fit him, it's SGA by a mile. He's 11-8 going up against the Wizards. You probably can't play SGA and Giannis and get to got some of the more expensive Boston pieces. So you got to make that choice. If you don't want to play SGA, then you can play Derek White at 8K. You can play FVV at 8,300. Two viable punts at the point guard position are Peyton Pritchard and Chris Dunn. I think in cash, I prefer Chris Dunn, but Pritchard is fine too, and he's $500 less. That would be all at point guard. Shooting guard, value piece is Malik Beasley at 4,400. Obviously, you're 100% playing Chris Middleton in cash, whether it be shooting guard or small forward. He's going to be in your cash game lineup. I would do the same thing with Malik Beasley, at least in cash games, whether that be at small forward or shooting guard. Getting to one of these Celtics guys, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, probably should be in your cash game build. Terry Rozier, I think he's more of a tournament play. I'm not really a fan of that game. I'm really just focusing on Boston and Milwaukee and trying to go from there. Those are the two teams that I want to get the most exposure from. And then Oklahoma too. Small forward, Chris Middleton, Jaylen Brown, obviously Malik Beasley. I think Jalen Williams, 7,500, probably better for turns, but I think you could play him in cash. DeMar DeRozan, I think, is too expensive for cash, but definitely in the tournament equation. Same thing with Miles Bridges. But I would just focus on Jalen Williams, Chris Middleton, and Jaylen Brown at small forward. Power forward, Giannis is the top play, but like I said, it's tough to play SGA and those more expensive Boston pieces and Giannis. Like, you can't do that. You have to choose between Giannis and SGA. I'm leaning to SGA and saving the $1,000 in cash. That could end up being really, really bad. But I am going to play $4, and one of the and they're not going to be. It's not going to be Giannis. So, but he is the top raw point projected player on the entire slate. He's 12-8. He's in a really amazing matchup. Doesn't have to share the usage with Dame at all. So smash play. I think Bobby Portis is okay for cash games at 5,300. John Collins, 55. Kristaps Porzingis. I like Brown and White better for Boston, so I would prefer just staying away from him in cash games. And then center, it's Al Horford for me at cash. And then the rest of the guys are tournament plays.
Okay, very good. Well, speaking of tournament plays, that is what the Iceman does. So, Keith, what are your build thoughts here, and how far are you getting off of what seems like the right thing to do, kind of that chalky cash build that Tides was walking us through there?
Yeah, not differentiating all that much. I think how I'm getting a little bit unique is limiting my players. So Squirrel was talking about this a little bit on the last show. Like $4 are absolutely viable for cash. If you limit your bucks to 3, which I am doing, I think you're going to start seeing 4 Boston guys pop into optimal lineups. So limiting Boston to 3 players as well. Like that allows me to get into this Oklahoma City Washington game a little bit. and also into this Chicago-Charlotte game a little bit as well. I think those 4 games stand way above the other 2 games on this slate. Like, I have very little interest in Houston-Miami and very little interest in Suns-Clippers. So limiting my exposure to Boston and Milwaukee to get pieces of those other 2 good games. Like, we have 6 games on the slate, and 4 of these teams are bottom 8 in defensive rating, and everybody's playing Boston against Indy, and everybody's playing Milwaukee against Utah. Nobody hardly is playing Chicago against Charlotte. We need to talk about Chicago's situation a little bit too. Levine was listed questionable on the injury report. There was a report that came out that said he was available, and then there was a report that said, actually, wait, he's still questionable. So as of right now, Zach LaVine is still questionable. Him and Vucevic have both missed several games and then just returned for 1 game. And they both returned on a minutes restriction. Both of them played off of the bench in that last game as well. So currently we have them to play off the bench again, but with slightly more minutes than they saw in the last game, which means absolutely nobody's playing them because they're not projecting all that great. Vucevic is the one I'm extremely interested in there just because of the matchup against Charlotte. Like, we play bigs against Charlotte all the time. If Vucevic is announced in the starting lineup here, I think there's upside for like 32, 34 minutes in this spot. Vucevic is one of my favorite tournament plays on the slate.
So we are getting some people saying Levine is in.
Okay.
So I haven't seen that officially.
For the second time, I just want to make sure that there was another report that reconfirmed him back in, because he was confirmed in earlier and then moved back to questionable.
Yeah, I'm not sure here. There's just a couple people in the chat, so I don't know.
All right. When Tim goes through DraftKings, I'll look and at the official report and see what's up.
And it looks like the Bulls are starting White, Caruso, DeRozan, Williams, and Drummond.
Yeah, they did bring out their starting lineup, Keith.
Yeah. Okay. New report on Levine. And Drummond starting, which is unfortunate for my hope that Vucevic sees 32 to 34 minutes. I would say he is definitely still limited in this spot. That doesn't mean you can't play him just because the Hornets are so shorthanded and they're terrible against bigs. So Vucevic is still in play, even though I think you're at a hard minutes cap of like 31, 32 minutes, but still interested there.
Okay. You want to walk me through just a FanDuel tournament build?
Yeah. So we'll just start at the point guard position. I think SGA is a fantastic play. I agree with Tim that I prefer him slightly over Giannis just because I only want $3 and I'm playing into all the value plays. I did want to talk actually before we go position by position. I did want to talk about rotations a little bit.
Yeah.
Like Milwaukee recently has been moving away from Malik Beasley a little bit. And we're also making an assumption that Andre Jackson is a starter and plays like full minutes. Matters a little bit more on DraftKings, where Andre Jackson's very much in play as a value. I mean, it would not surprise me if like Beasley only saw 22, 24 minutes. Last game, Beauchamp actually started the second half over Beasley. So leaning into guys like Pat Connaughton and Marjon Beauchamp, who are not projecting all that well right now, is definitely one of my strategies for tournaments. Similarly with Boston, like we're projecting Cornette and Pritchard to play like bigger minutes. Guys like Svi Mikhailiuk and O'Shea Brissett wouldn't surprise me if they played minutes as well. So just like these are new injury situations, they're fragile situations. So lean into that a little bit in tournaments was the last point I wanted to make there.
Okay, great.
At point guard, we're looking SGA is my favorite play on the entire slate. Awesome matchup against Washington. They play at a fast pace. They don't play any defense. Derek White he sees the biggest usage bump of anybody with Jason Tatum off the floor. We have Sam Hauser out as well. Derek White has massive upside here. He could play upper 30s minutes in this spot. Peyton Pritchard is a guy I'm a little bit underweight on just because he's projecting as the top value on the Celtics right now. I want to lean into some of those other guys a little bit, like a pivot to O'Shea Brissett or guys like that. I think is what I'm I don't think it is what I'm doing on the slate. Drew Holiday is one of the lower owned Celtics. I think he is a great tournament play. Chris Dunn is another value that's not all that comfortable. His minutes have been up on the uptick here recently, though. Like he's been regularly seeing over 20 in the last two after playing like 18, 19 for a while. So I do have some Chris Dunn, but a little bit underweight there. Josh Giddey, I think, is a fine tournament play, a little bit better on DraftKings. Tough price over here on FanDuel. And then Kobe White, I think, has upside in this matchup against Charlotte. Very expensive. We have Levine and like everybody healthy on the Bulls now, so it's a little bit tougher to jam in Kobe White at that price. But I think there's still a little bit of a ceiling there. I think most of those guys are eligible at shooting guard as well. Just trying to see if they're Terry Rozier, a name I didn't mention, definitely like him. Plenty of upside. Charlotte extremely shorthanded in this spot, so definitely want some Rozier. Moving on to some forwards here. Pat Connaughton, a guy that I'm well overweight on. Like, we don't have a Bucks starting lineup yet. Like, maybe Pat Connaughton starts ahead of Andre Jackson. I don't think that's the case. But if something like that were to break, definitely makes Connaughton an even stronger play. Also think there's upside on 24 minutes. If Jackson is struggling or Beasley is struggling, a guy like Connaughton could see a few more minutes than we're projecting in the spot. I think Denny Avdia has a nice price. I'm trying to get some runbacks for my SGA stuff. So Washington stuff is pretty uncomfortable, but I think Avdia is one of the guys you can look at there. Brandon Miller, also another guy, very shorthanded Charlotte team. Chicago plays at the slowest pace in the NBA, so not a great spot for Charlotte, but as shorthanded as they are, I think somebody has a chance to pop in the spot. Some power forwards, Lauri Markkanen, a guy that I do like a lot in tournaments as runbacks with Milwaukee stuff. Like, if you're playing Giannis, I probably want a guy like Markkanen in that on the other side. John Collins is a guy that I have a lot of interest in as well. Has been starting at the 5. They've been limiting Kessler quite a bit here, so I think Collins has solid upside here. The Bucks guys are great. I'm going to be slightly under the field on Giannis, so I can get overweight on SGA, but he's obviously a fantastic play. Bobby Portis in a great spot. Should have a chance at some extra minutes here. Awesome matchup against Utah. I mentioned Kuzma and Avdia. I think that about does it for the forwards. And then at the center position, Chet Holmgren is one of my favorite plays in tournaments. One of the best matchups for bigs in the entire league. Washington allows the most rebounds in the NBA. Chet could absolutely have a monster game in this spot. Tough to fit him with SGA, so I think you're probably leaning on one or the other to have the ceiling game here. But love Chet Holmgren. Nurkic is one of the few guys that I like in the Phoenix Clippers game just because of the price point. Brook Lopez is a fantastic play with no Dame there. Could see a little bit more usage here. Mentioned Portis and Collins at the power forward position. And then Gafford if you're looking for a cheap guy to play at center. And then Vucevic we talked about already.
Okay, excellent stuff. We should mention this show sponsored by FanDuel. They got some of the best bonuses in the biz. You bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Shout out to our sponsor, FanDuel. Hit us with a thumbs up because the show is free. You're really just hitting yourself with a thumbs up because we want to keep this show free. We need the eyeballs. Let's kick it over to DK. Tim, I'll hold off on my thoughts because I'm doing some funky stuff tournament-wise, but walk me through what we should be doing.
Do you need somebody cheap, Roth?
I do, but I need it to be a center.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know.
That's tough today.
Yeah,
I've
I've really backed myself into a corner with my build, but I will let you figure that out while Tim walks us through a
so we got to talk about Andre Jackson. Keith was correct to mention about rotations about Milwaukee, but assuming Andre Jackson starts, he's 3,100. Personally, I think he's a terrible GPP play, but he allows you to do a ton of stuff. So, and I would put him in your small forward position. Your pay up is SGA at 10.4. Derek White at 7,400. I think is a smash play. Peyton Pritchard 4,300. I think is fine for cash. Terry Rozier 8,300. I think is okay too. Shooting guard. Chris Middleton has to be in your cash games. Jaylen Brown also. I'm pretty sure. Derek White. Drew Holiday, I think, is good at 6,800, but he's probably better for tournaments. Colin Sexton, same thing. Small forward Andre Jackson should be in your cash games. And then Chris Middleton, if you're not playing him at shooting guard, play him at small forward. Jalen Williams, I think, is a great pivot away from Chris Middleton in tournaments. Same thing with Lauri Markkanen. Power forward, you can play Pat Connaughton as a cheapie, or you can play Giannis if you want to. Right in the middle is John Collins at 52. And then Kristaps Porzingis at 79 is okay for cash and GPP. At center, it's tough. Center is really tough today. I think Chet is probably your cash game guy, or Brook Lopez, or Walker Kessler.
Okay. Very nice. Ice, let's walk through your tournament thoughts. Did you find me a cheap center?
How cheap are we talking here? Are you going to kill me?
I've got like 8K for 2 dudes, so preferably like 4 something.
Okay, cheap centers I think are in play. Luke Cornett at 4,600. I think there's upside on his minutes. I prefer him over Kelly Olynyk, although he is in play as well. He's currently projected better than Cornett, but they've been really limiting him lately. I mean, if you want to go like punt, like way gross, like Mike Muscala is the name I'm going to have to throw out there. Maybe Nathan Mensah for Charlotte could potentially see some decent run here.
So I've got Jovic, and I saw a couple people bring him up in chat. Is that reasonable or no? That's a no-go.
So we had Jovic projected to start most of the day. Highsmith is back, and we did just make a change about 30 minutes ago to move Highsmith starting ahead of Jovic. If Jovic gets announced in the starting lineup, absolutely you can play him, but I think there's severe risk if he's not starting that he only plays like 12 minutes. So
gotcha.
I would prefer Cornett over Jovic in that spot.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for helping me. Let's help the rest of the folks out here as they go through their build.
All right. A lot of the same names. I mean, all the Boston guys are still great. All the Milwaukee guys are still great. And then leaning into getting weird with the cheap stuff is kind of how I'm differentiating today. So at point guard, SGA, still one of my favorites, even over here on DraftKings. Terry Rozier, a good tournament play. Derek White is one of the top price-adjusted plays on the whole slate. Nobody's playing Fred VanVleet, including me, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me for him to find a ceiling game. Kobe White is a guy that I mentioned. I have a little bit of him. Don't mind this, even though everybody's back. Don't mind the Josh Giddey price. I think he can do a little bit of everything. It's an awesome matchup. If he can run into 26, 28 minutes, he would look like a lot better value than he's currently projected for. At the shooting guard position, Jaylen Brown, one of the top plays on the entire slate. Definitely want to be overweight on him. I love that ownership on Jaylen Brown. For what it's worth, I think he absolutely has a fantastic opportunity to smash his projection today. He's cheap enough where he doesn't like prohibit your lineup like a Giannis or even an SGA does. You can fit him with one of those guys. So love that ownership on Jaylen Brown. Want to be significantly over the field there. Chris Middleton is near lock button territory, should handle the ball, like Tim was saying. Usage goes way up without Damian Lillard as well. So fantastic Middleton spot. Drew Holiday could see a little bit more usage here without Tatum. So definitely like him as well. Brandon Miller, a guy for Charlotte that I have a little bit of exposure to. Some other forwards here. Markkanen, a guy that I've mentioned, like him over here on DK as well. Jalen Williams, a guy, I'm not sure if I mentioned him on FanDuel, definitely like him on FanDuel as well if I forgot to mention him. Just love this matchup for OKC against Washington. Want to get as much exposure as I can to it. SGA is really expensive, so going to guys like Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and Josh Giddey, a big part of my build today. Couple of power forwards I'm over the weight on. So you mentioned Markkanen already. Jalen Williams has power forward as well. Horford is really expensive here on DraftKings, so I think that makes him a solid tournament play. Not a guy that we often think of has a ceiling, but in the spot against Indy, I think that he can pay off that price tag, even though it's a little uncomfortable. Bobby Portis has a very nice price, can definitely play him. Jaime Jaquez is a guy who's been playing a ton of minutes here. Don't love that game environment, but don't mind him if you fall in that range there. A couple of centers here. Mentioned Chet Holmgren. still one of my favorites. Vucevic as well. Nurkic, a guy I'm over the field on, and Brook Lopez.
Okay, very good. We've got 13 minutes or so until we hit the lock, which is oodles and oodles of time for questions. Tim, is there anything that you want to add or help the folks out with before we dive into some QQs? I think you're muted.
Any min-max rules on Milwaukee, Keith?
Yeah, I'm going max 3 on Milwaukee. I didn't put them in there just because I'm getting them organically anyway, but I would definitely make sure you have at least one Milwaukee piece. Pretty hard to see them failing in this spot. Kind of same with Boston. I think you want at least one Boston piece as well, yeah. but max 3 Boston for me also.
Okay, let's do it. Let's take some QQs. Of course, I'm starting in the RotoGrinders Discord because that's where all the cool kids are hanging out. Matt says, hey, Drummond is starting, and we did mention that. Keith, I saw his price point on DK drop like, I don't know, $1,500, but now he's not getting the minutes. Is that going to be the issue?
Yeah, I mean, Vucevic is going to play at least what he played last game, I would think. And I think it was like 26 if I'm pulling that up right now. 24 for Vucevic. So like Drummond and Vucevic are not going to be on the floor together. Whatever Vucevic plays, that means that Drummond cannot play those minutes. So his very limited minutes upside today. Yeah,
and while his price dropped, it didn't drop enough to justify that in half the normal minutes. Okay. Ice, Horford or Gafford in a FanDuel GPP?
I prefer Horford slightly. If you don't have at least 2 other Boston pieces, then I would go Horford. But if you do have 3 pieces from Boston already, then I don't mind Gafford at all.
Okay. Matt says, hey, Ice, if you have a lineup with SGA and Chet, do you need a Washington run back? And if so, who is your favorite whiz to do so? It's a DK single entry question.
Yeah, really good question. I as much salary as you're spending, I do kind of think that you need a Washington piece in there. Gafford is a guy we just talked about. I like him.
Do you have any Jordan Poole? Do you have any Jordan Poole, Keith?
I do not have Jordan Poole.
Isn't he like 5,600?
He is 5,600. I don't hate that. Koulibaly is a guy that I like a little bit as well. He's been playing big minutes. They do have Shamet back, so we haven't projected for 26, but Koulibaly's been playing 30 pretty often here recently, so I don't mind Koulibaly.
Okay. Let's see. FanDuel Cash. Tides, you want Collins, Bam, or Market and Horford?
I guess Collins, Bam.
Okay, you don't seem thrilled about it.
No, I like the I like Marketing. You know, they're both good. They're both good. They're both fine.
All right. DKGPP, Ice, I've got Giannis and Pat C. To that, should I add Portis, Nick Richardson, or Love?
So Portis, Nick Richards, or Richardson?
I'm sorry. I don't know why I said Richardson. It's Portis, Nick Richards, or Love.
Portis would be my preferred option.
Okay. FanDuel GPP, Ice, right back to you here. Horford and Abdia or Gafford Neesmith?
First one there.
Okay. Steve O says DK GPP Tides. I'm going to give this one to you just for fun. Would you play Giannis and Middleton together?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I would bring somebody back though from Utah.
Tides, I'm fading Middleton. Is that just dumb? Am I just being dumb?
Not in GPP.
It is.
I mean,
Keith thinks it's dumb.
I think it's dumb, but in GPP it's okay. But I mean, it's I wouldn't do it. I've never made 150 teams in a night. I'm pretty sure I would go all in tonight. But
is it that good of a spot? Ice, what percentage do you have?
So
of Middleton?
we did not mention that Cameron Payne is out. I have 80% Middleton, by the way. Yeah, it's a phenomenal spot. Awesome matchup, and he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot more. We did not mention Cameron Payne is also out. So there's no point guard on this roster. Ty Washington maybe sees like the backup point guard minutes, but Giannis and Middleton are going to have the ball in their hands a ton. I'm pulling it up just so I can quote it for you. Let me see here. Middleton gets, why is that not? The bump without Dame is significant.
Yeah.
And it's not loading correctly for me here.
That's all right.
Here it is. 8.2% usage bump, 6.3 assist rate bump as well. So like he does a lot more without Lillard on the floor for sure.
And he's going to get all the minutes that he can handle.
Yes. Yeah, he's played over 30 in 7 of his last 8, I believe, as high as like 34. So yeah, probably looking at like 32 to 34 minutes with a ton of usage and more assists than usual.
Okay. All right. Okay. It's not going to end well for me because I'm sticking with it. All right. FanDuel cash question. Tides is a 4v4. And then in parentheses says, I'm sorry, Roth. Good. You better apologize for that. We generally do not accept it. But since you apologized, Tides, you want SGA, Pat Connaughton, Zinger, and Horford, or Tyus, Nick Smith, Kuz, and Giannis?
That was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. It's the first one for me.
Okay, very good. Jumping into the YouTube chat here, seeing what we got, and scrolling up just a little bit. Jason says, Nathan Menza, or am I really reaching? You guys kind of mentioned it is a reach, but not too crazy. Ice?
I mean, he's going to see the floor because PJ Washington is out in addition to Mark Williams. So I think you're safe for like 14 minutes, as much as like 20 minutes in the spot. He hasn't done a ton while he's been out there, but there are crazier things you can do.
Okay. Flying armbar on FanDuel, looking for a punt here. And Tides, I'll give this one to you. You want Jay Rich or Kevin Love?
I'd probably go Jay Rich in that spot.
Okay. Ice, any Jordan Clarkson in DKGPPs?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're playing Giannis. I did not mention his name, but I definitely like him if Giannis is in my lineup particularly.
Okay, great. Mr. Richard says, how about Abdia? Tim, got any Abdia?
I think that's fine for tournaments. Completely fine.
Okay, great. DKGPP from Steven. Markkanen Ice or Jaylen Brown? Markkanen or Jaylen Brown?
Jaylen Brown.
Okay. Prem says, any thoughts on Jalen Green? This is definitely a GPP question here because never have we ever played Jalen Green in cash. Ice, Jalen Green instead of Brolo Gafford at the DK util spot.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's just a really tough spot against Miami. I definitely prefer Brolo there if I was picking one of those guys, but like if you're really chalky in the rest of your lineup and need to differentiate, he does have a ceiling theoretically, but tough spot.
Okay. Tim, this is an interesting question here. How hard would you lean into Jackson if he was 3K? He plays on a site where he is basically the equivalent of a 3K player. So,
well, he's 3.1K on DK. I mean, I don't really like Jackson that much for like large field GPPs. I like him for cash because he opens up a ton of salary. I don't know what Key's take is on Jackson and GPPs. How much of him do you have on DK?
Almost at our projected ownership, just because he allows you to do so much with your lineup. I am I have about 45%. We have him projected for almost 50%, so slightly underweight, but
yeah,
there are things you can do with him that there's not like a direct pivot for. So he's definitely a big part of my pool.
Yeah.
Okay. Big Show Brandon says, Keith, what are your thoughts on Amen Thompson? I landed on him. Like, it was kind of the last player. I'm like, is that insane?
I don't think this is a spot I would like. Eventually, I think he's going to start seeing more minutes, like mid-20s, but we're not there yet. I keep playing him up until this point. I don't think this is the right day to do it, though. Just a tough spot against Miami, and there's no guarantee that he's going to play more than like 16, 18 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. What else do we got here? Sean says, hey, Ice, by the way, we're about 3 minutes until lock. Sean says, Ice, I'm getting to $4 in a FanDuel GPP. Am I a stupid loser or can I roll with it? That's so aggressive. You're not a stupid loser, but
definitely not a stupid loser. Your lineups are going to project better than mine. But like, it depends on it. Did he say large field single entry? What?
I don't think he mentioned the format there. Let me see. It just said FanDuel GPP.
if you're playing a large field tournament, I'm searching for ceiling, and I want to find the 3 Bucks guys who are going to hit their ceiling. But certainly your lineup is going to project better than most of my lineups because the Bucks project so well as shorthanded as they are.
Gotcha. Okay. Hammer says, hey, Kevin, what's the weather in Dallas? I don't know, but I do know the weather for wildcard weekend looks horrible. I want the unders. I want all the unders in all the outdoor games. You heard it here first. The totals have actually already been dropping because people are crazy. But the weather looks really crappy in Buffalo. It looks really crappy in Kansas City. Feels like temperature of negative 20 degrees. And I think it is probably going to rain in Tampa. So just floating that out there for you if you're into that kind of thing. How much Pritchard do you have on FanDuel?
Just one lineup for me on FanDuel, and he is in it.
Okay, great. DK tournament thoughts, Giddy or Shy? That's kind of a weird one because they're very different. But Ice, your thoughts?
I mean, it's obviously SGA. I do have a good amount of Giddy. I think he's a very, very strong tournament play today. So again, it kind of depends on what you're doing with the rest of your lineup. I think Giddy's a very viable pivot.
Okay. Smoke and Jay says FanDuel GPP. Tim, I'm going to give this one to you. It says, I don't want to play Dunn as a last piece of point guard. I don't blame you. Anybody in that 5K range or under that I can play with some sort of confidence, parentheses, I already do have Pritchard.
This was on DK.
This was FanDuel GPP. You got 5K, doesn't want to play Dunn at point.
Doesn't want to play Dunn. I mean, does he already have Pritchard?
Yeah, he's got Pritchard.
Man, that's tough.
Got to rebuild it, my friends.
Yeah,
You're getting
nothing standing out for me.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really bad. I guess it's Amen Thompson, maybe, but I think that's not a great play.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Mr. Irrelevant says, I've got SGA. I'm using 2 Jazz starters and a Jazz bench player. Is that too many Jazz? I'm hoping that they can keep it close. Ice?
I assume you have a bunch of Milwaukee with that, or I hope that you have a bunch of Milwaukee.
Yeah, you better have a bunch of Milwaukee with that team.
Okay. I think that's the answer right there.
Yeah, I mean, you need at least 3 Bucks pieces with that, I think.
Okay.
2.
You're hoping for overtime, double, you're hoping
or just the highest scoring game on the slate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. FanDuel single entry and Ice. Do you mind Highsmith as a punt if it allows you to get SGA and Rozier at guard?
Only if he's starting, and even then it's dicey. They had started to cut his minutes back a little bit even before the injury, so I would not do it if he's not starting. If he is starting, I'd be okay with it.
Okay. We are rapidly approaching lock, less than a minute away. We've gotten most of the questions. Ice, get jealous because I've got Giannis on DK, I've got SGA, and I've got White all in the same build. Yeah.
Sounds good. And
I
who was your center again?
I also have Cornette and Thompson, Beauchamp.
I like the Beauchamp play. Leaning into weird Bucks stuff, I think is smart.
Yeah. We shall see. Hey, with that, we've hit the lock. We've given out the plays. We've answered the questions. And Tim is half dead. You made it. I think you kind of went downhill. Did you get Novocaine or something? You sound like you just came from the dentist.
No, I haven't had a voice for like a week. I thought I was good to go, but apparently I'm not. So.
Yeah,
if this is an improvement, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
I got a long ways to go still, but appreciate you getting it out for us.
I couldn't even talk for like 5 days.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
All right.
I had COVID really bad.
So. All right. Well, we're glad that you are back. Glad that you are starting to feel a little bit better. Continue that recovery. We're going to bounce on out of here. So for Tim, for Ice, for our wonderful production crew, always working hard behind the scenes. Guys, we appreciate you. We love you. And we will catch you tomorrow. You have been crunched.